In the heart of the jungle, in the dense darkness of night, the eyes that glowed were not those of an ordinary beast. When the first scream echoed through the valley, people assumed it was just a wild animal that had lost its way. But what followed was a sight so horrifying that it gripped the entire region with fear. Every turn concealed an ambush. Every sound carried death. Anyone who entered this forest might never return. Some events are hard to believe, yet they are real. And today's story is one of them. This is not merely a tale, it is an experience, one that seeps into your senses, etches itself onto your heart, and after hearing it, you may never perceive the silence of night the same way again. It was a heavy, brooding evening in July 1958 when I, both a hunter and a researcher, set out toward the forests of Siripura. The moisture of recent rainfall still lingered in the air, and the cool breeze carried the mixed scent of damp soil and fallen leaves. The dense trees ahead looked as though the goddess of night herself had wrapped the earth in a black veil. These forests, scattered among the mountains, had always been symbols of danger and mystery, but this time the situation was far from ordinary. The letter that reached me was not merely a request for a hunter's help. It was filled with trembling words of terror, words so shaken that one could imagine the writer's hands quivering as they were written. The opening lines were so chilling that they seemed to carry a distant, mournful cry from deep within the jungle. It was night, but not a calm one like most others. Thick layers of clouds covered the sky, preventing moonlight from reaching the ground. The shadows of towering trees merged together, spreading an unsettling darkness. At the edge of this gloom lay a small, forgotten village. Narrow mud paths, houses built from branches and wood, and beyond the last fields, the jungle began immediately. The villagers lived in poverty, yet their hearts were resilient. They had endured every hardship life threw at them, but for the past few weeks they had been living under a kind of fear they had never known before. That night, the air itself felt restless. Dogs barked endlessly, chickens flapped in panic, and from the windows of their homes, people stared out, eyes filled with dread. There was no sleep, only fear. The village elders used to say that when the jungle falls silent, danger is on the move. And tonight, the forest stood breathless. No crickets chirped, no monkeys cried out, not a single bird took flight. It was as if all nature was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Every house in the village had its oil lamp lit, but the light was weak and trembling. Mothers clutched their children tightly to their chests. Men stood behind doors, gripping sticks, spears, or whatever weapons they could find. In some eyes there was anger, in others, helplessness. But on every face the same question was written. Whose turn will it be tonight? In just a few days, 3 lives had already been lost. First, a woodcutter, then a woman working in the fields, and finally, a young shepherd boy. Each death followed the same pattern, bodies brutally torn apart, deep claw marks gouged into the ground, and every time the same heavy footprints leading back into the jungle. This isn't the work of an ordinary bear, the village elder Nazir had said. It's a black bear, and a massive one, perhaps from a breed that hasn't been seen in generations. It has become a man-eater. That night, every door in the village was shut tight, but one house was filled with greater unrest than the rest. It was Hamid's home. Hamid's father was the shepherd who had been the bear's most recent victim. The entire village knew the storm raging inside Hamid's heart. Grief, rage, fear, all tangled together. Hamid sat beside his mother. She stroked his hair, trying to comfort him, though her own hands were trembling. "Son, the door is locked properly, isn't it?" she whispered. "Yes, Ami, don't worry." But there was no confidence in Hamid's voice. He too had heard that terrifying sound the villagers had been hearing for days, a deep, rumbling breath like something enormous moving slowly through the darkness. Then, suddenly, a sound echoed. Thump, thump, thump.
Footsteps, heavy, dense, and drawing closer. Dogs began barking like mad. Chickens flapped wildly in panic. Chaos erupted in every house. Hamid glanced at his mother. The color had drained from her face. "That's it, isn't it?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Hamid didn't answer, but both of them already knew the truth. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Then came a silence so deep it screamed in the ears.
Suddenly, something slammed into the wall. Crash! The house shook violently. Screams rose across the village. Someone cried out, "Ya Allah!" Someone hid their children. Someone stood frozen behind a door, trembling. Then another udar. Boom! This time, dust and mud rained down from the ceiling. Hamid tightened his grip on the stick and moved toward the door. "No, my son," his mother grabbed his arm. "Ami, if we don't do something, it'll come inside." Hamid's voice broke. From outside came a deep, savage sound, raw, powerful, and with it the harsh rasp of heavy breathing. It was the black bear. A bear twice the size of any ordinary one. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. Its stench filled the air so thickly that anyone could recognize it from afar. It was not social. It did not belong to this land. Hunger had turned it into a man-eater, and now humans were its primary prey. Hamid peered through a small crack in the door. In the darkness, two red eyes gleamed, eyes that did not belong to any normal animal. They were staring straight at him. Hamid's heart felt as if it might stop beating. Stepping backward, he whispered, "Ami, it's standing right in front of the door." Then the bear lunged with full force. The door rattled violently, wood splintered with a shriek. Grrr! That sound belonged to the bear, and it was so close it felt as if it were breathing inside the house. The entire village was awake now. No one dared step outside, but they had learned their lesson from behind their walls. Stay silent. Do not move. If anyone screamed, the bear would charge instantly. That creature could sense fear, and that was why the village lay buried in a death-like silence. Then the bear struck the wall. 4 long, deep claw marks tore across it. It felt as though it hadn't ripped through mud and wood, but through the earth itself. Hamid's mother pulled him tightly against her chest. "My son, nothing will happen, nothing will happen." Yet her own tears streamed from her eyes. The bear began circling the house. It moved silently, then attacked without warning, slamming into the walls, leaping toward the roof. Its strength was far beyond that of any human. The heavy rasp of its breathing made it clear. It wasn't just hungry, it was enraged. Then it stopped. Slowly, it lifted its snout as if tasting the air. It had caught the scent of the people inside. In that moment, the entire village held its breath. If it attacked with full force, nothing would be able to stop it. And at that exact moment, a different animal's cry echoed from deep within the jungle. The bear froze, lifted its head, then it turned and vanished into the darkness as if it had never been there at all. But the village knew this was only the first attack. It would return, and next time, no one might survive. Even after the bear had gone, peace did not return to the village. Somewhere deep in everyone's chest, the same thought kept stabbing at them. This silence was the calm before the storm. No one slept. No one extinguished their lamps. Every house stayed alit. Awake in the darkness, eyes open, tracing the shape of fear. But this was only the beginning. The true devastation would reveal itself the next morning. At sunrise, villagers slowly began opening their doors. People looked at one another, yet no words were spoken. Fear is the kind of thing that steals a person's voice. On every face, the same question was written: when will it return? Nazir Baba was the first to reach the house that had been attacked during the night. The moment he saw the deep claw marks carved into the wall, the color drained from his face. "This is no ordinary bear. Do you see its strength?" he muttered. The wall wasn't just damaged, it had been driven inward. It looked as though someone had tried to crush it with a massive hammer. Wounds like these could only have been caused by a powerful breed of black bear, the kind rarely found outside the northern forests. Villagers gathered around the house. Even the children peeked out from behind their parents. Hamid stood in the doorway, his face exhausted, but his eyes burned like fire. "Son, did anyone see which direction it went?" Nazir Baba asked. In a low voice, Hamid replied, "Toward the jungle, but Ami said it stood there for a long time, watching us, like it was waiting for us to come outside." A ripple of whispers spread through the village. "It's a man-eater," someone murmured. Yes, once a predator tastes human flesh, it never truly remains an animal. The discussion was still unfolding when suddenly a woman's scream tore through the air from the southern edge of the village. It wasn't a scream of fear, it was terror. "Help! Someone, please, come here!" Everyone ran toward the sound. Hamid sprinted ahead of the others. When they reached the spot, the sight stole the breath from their lungs. The ground had been torn up, as if a massive beast had struggled there. Leaves lay scattered beneath the trees, shredded pieces of clothing, splashes of blood, and most telling of all, huge footprints pressed deep into the earth. It was the same bear, but this time it hadn't taken a human life. It had torn something away from someone's doorstep and carried it off. The woman who had screamed was gasping for breath. "My buffalo! It took my buffalo away in a single strike. I saw it with my own eyes. She was enormous, but it lifted her like a sack." The color drained from every face. Nazir Baba studied the footprints. This isn't ordinary strength. Knocking a buffalo down is one thing, but lifting it and carrying it away, that's only possible in two cases. Either the bear possesses extraordinary mass, or it was driven by rage. A young man shouted, "We have to do something now. It will destroy everything in the village one by one." But Nazir Baba hesitated. "You have no idea how powerful it is. Even the strength of 4 men is nothing against such a bear. This isn't hunting, it's claiming territory." Fresh tracks led toward the jungle. Crushed grass, flattened leaves, and bark stripped from trees here and there, as if the bear had lashed out in anger as it carved its path. Hamid stared at the tracks in silence. He said nothing, but inside him the fire of revenge was growing. Just then, several farmers came running. "It came again, near the fields. It killed 2 goats and dragged them away. Only the heads were left behind." Fear sank even deeper into the people's hearts. The man-eating bear's attacks were becoming more frequent and in different locations. It was a clear sign that the bear had begun to see the village as its hunting ground. Then came an incident that shook the village to its core.
The afternoon was slipping away when a boy named Kaleem went to the edge of the forest to gather firewood. He was only 15, but responsibility had forced him to grow up quickly. He thought the bear didn't appear every day. Maybe today he'd collect wood in peace. But what he didn't know was that the bear was already lying in wait nearby. Kaleem was bent among the bushes, gathering wood, when suddenly a heavy, rasping sound tore through the air. He looked up. 2 red eyes were staring straight at him. The wood slipped from Kaleem's hands. He tried to run, but the bear covered the distance in seconds. It roared. A roar so powerful it made the entire jungle tremble. The bear rose onto its hind legs, lifting its massive body, then slammed both paws into the ground with full force. The impact echoed like an explosion. Kaleem stumbled, his legs giving way. He screamed, "Help!" 2 farmers were working nearby in the fields. They heard the cry and ran toward the sound, grabbing their tools. When they arrived, Kaleem was trembling behind a large tree, and the bear was dangerously close. The farmers shouted at the top of their lungs and began swinging burning torches in their hands. The bear snapped its head around, roared again, and as the flames came closer, it stepped back. Then, in a sudden motion, it turned and disappeared into the depths of the forest, but not before slamming its full weight into the trunk of a tree, as if displaying its power. The tree shook violently, bark peeling away. This was not just an attack, it was a message. News of Kaleem's survival spread through the village like wildfire. People stopped stepping outside their homes. Children no longer peered through windows. Men began arguing among themselves whether to make firebombs, build barricades, or set up night patrols. But everyone knew the truth. No matter how alert humans became, matching the bear's speed, strength, and cunning would not be easy. Hamid sat silently, listening to everything. There was no fear left on his face, only resolve. He knew the bear would return, and next time, someone would surely fall prey to it. "I'll stop it," he said softly. But no one heard him, because at that very moment, the same sound drifted out from deep within the jungle. That deep, broken, rasping breath, a sound that carried a single message. The man-eating bear had not left the village. It was circling, searching for its next victim. Outwardly, the village tried to appear strong, but inside it was breaking apart. As evening fell, doors were locked, windows sealed, livestock moved to safer places, and men gathered with sticks in their hands to stand guard. Yet exhaustion, fear, and helplessness were clearly written in every pair of eyes. No one knew when the bear would strike again or whom it would choose. That night, a cold wind blew. Clouds raced across the sky as if nature itself were restless. The men on watch sat around a fire, some silent with bowed heads, others whispering nervously. But Hamid leaned against the wall of his house, staring unblinking towards the jungle. His mother called out, "Come inside, the night is growing deep." He didn't move. "Ummi, it will come again tonight, I can feel it." Her mother replied in a trembling voice, "Allah will help us, my son. Please don't stay outside." But Hamid's mind kept returning to the moment the bear had attacked their home, the sound of its breathing, its raw power, the sight that had changed his life forever. He couldn't go inside. Not tonight.
Just then, the sound of running footsteps came from the northern side of the village. A man came sprinting, shouting, "The bear! The bear is near the open grazing ground! It's taking the livestock!" Color drained from every face. No one hesitated. Torches were lit, sticks were grabbed. Some men armed themselves with heavy wooden clubs. Without wasting a second, they all ran toward the grazing field. When they arrived, the ground was torn up. Stakes had been ripped from the earth. A goat lay flung aside, as if something had dragged it and tossed it away. Then they saw it. A black shape, massive, powerful, terrifying in size. The bear stood there, a large goat clamped in its jaws. Seeing the men, the bear roared. This was not the roar of an ordinary animal. It was the roar of an enraged, dominant predator, declaring that this land now belonged to it. The men instinctively stepped back. Some thrust their torches forward, trying to frighten it away, but the bear did not stop. With lightning speed, it surged forward and slammed a woodcutter with its paw. The man was thrown nearly 4 feet away, his scream ripping through the air. Another man stepped in front of the bear. The bear lunged, bringing its front paws down on a thick wooden log lying on the ground. The log split cleanly in two. This was no ordinary bear. People began to retreat in panic. Torches fell to the ground, scattering firelight in all directions. But the bear wasn't chasing anyone. It was simply displaying its power, as if delivering a clear warning to the villagers to stay out of its way. Then it roared once more and charged back toward the jungle, so fast that the ground seemed to tremble beneath the force of its leaps. Silence followed. Torches shook in trembling hands. Some men were injured, but miraculously, no one had been killed. Nazir Baba spoke in a quivering voice. "This animal doesn't want to kill us. It wants us to stay out of its territory. But if we don't step back, next time it won't." For a few moments, everyone stood frozen. Then an elderly man said, "This bear has become our enemy. If we do nothing, it will destroy the entire village." But the truth was even more serious. The bear had begun to see itself as the master of the village, a predator of extraordinary strength and intelligence, one that no longer feared humans, but was actively dominating them. Back in the village, people began tending to the wounded. Hamid, however, sat apart, staring up at the sky. There was no fire of revenge in his heart now, only questions. Why is this bear like this? Where did such immense strength come from? Who taught it such cunning?
He knew there was something inside this bear that ordinary predators did not possess, and until he uncovered the true reason behind it, this war could not end. The night grew deeper. From the distant jungle came that same sound again, heavy breathing, the rustle of shifting trees, and at times a dull thud, as if great weight were pressing into the earth.
Behind every door hid a frightened breath and a fragile hope. And the bear? It was circling the village now. When it would strike again, no one knew. In this remote village at the edge of the forest, even daytime peace had vanished. This was the same village where people once sat outside their doors after sunset, sharing stories, where cooking smoke drew pale blue lines across the sky, and only animal calls echoed in the distance. Now, every sound carried fear within it. Even during the day, people hesitated to open their doors fully. Children were forbidden to play outside alone. And at night, the scene was something else entirely. Flickering oil lamps, heavy wooden beams braced behind doors, and an eerie stillness in the air. All of it was because the man-eating black bear had grown even more fearless. Its attacks had not only increased, its behavior had changed. Before, it would lie silently in ambush and strike suddenly. Now, it moved openly, as if it knew the villagers could not challenge it. That day, the sun was harsh, but the forest shade was cool. 50-year-old Gesita, who had gone to collect firewood, was cautious as always. Every few steps he tossed a small stone, just to hear a sound, to sense if something nearby moved. But that day, even his caution proved insufficient. As Gesita reached down to lift a bundle of dry wood, he thought he heard a branch snap somewhere in the distance. He straightened immediately and drew a long breath, and a chill ran straight down his spine. From the jungle came that same slow, heavy breathing, the sound he had heard spoken of for days, the unmistakable signal of the bear's presence. Gesita began to back away slowly, but the bear's growl reached him before his footsteps could. The black bear burst out of the bushes as if fire had been lit beneath its back. In its eyes burned hunger, rage, and a habit that had already taken root. There was a strange confidence in the bear's movements, as if it already knew that the man standing before it would only be able to hold his ground for a few more moments. Gesita dropped the bundle of firewood and ran straight ahead, but a bear's speed is 3 times that of a human. The bear leapt forward, but this time it did not land with its full weight. Instead, it merely brushed Gesita's shoulder with its paw. That brush was no light touch. It was as if an iron rod had struck him. Gesita was thrown to the ground. For a few terrifying moments, the bear stood over his head, its hot breath warming Gesita's neck. Death felt close enough to touch. But then, suddenly, a sharp horn sounded from a distance, loud, relentless, blown with full force. This horn was the villagers' invention, a kind of emergency warning. Whenever a bear was spotted or danger was sensed, the horn was blown as loudly as possible. Hearing the sound, the bear abruptly stepped back. It twisted its massive body around and with a deep roar fled back into the forest. Perhaps the sound was unpleasant to it, or perhaps it had learned that the horn meant villagers would soon arrive in groups. Whatever the reason, Gesita's life was spared. The villagers carried him back to the village. Blood streamed from his shoulder, but he was alive. He became living proof that the bear was coming closer than before, growing bolder and attacking faster. The incident plunged the village into deeper fear. As evening fell, piles of dry wood were placed outside every house so fires could be lit instantly if the bear attacked. Women put their children to sleep away from doors and entrances. Men gathered in the central square, assigning night watch duties. That same night, Mirdine, the tallest man in the village, fast on his feet and deeply familiar with the ways of the forest, made an important announcement. He warned that the bear was no longer just an animal, it had begun to understand human weakness. "This is no ordinary bear," he said. "It is intelligent. It knows who goes where and when. It knows when the village is quiet, who is weak, who cannot run." People listened carefully. This was not a tale meant to scare. It was an observation drawn from experience. Over the past 2 weeks, the bear had selectively hunted the village livestock. What was unsettling wasn't just the attacks themselves, but the way each attack was different.
Sometimes it broke through roofs, sometimes it smashed walls in the dead of night, sometimes it snatched animals at dawn and disappeared. These changing patterns made one thing clear: this bear was not ordinary. It studied its prey.
Now the villagers were not only afraid, they were deeply troubled. Because when an animal becomes intelligent enough to understand human behavior, stopping it becomes extremely difficult. That night, Mayor Dean said something else that unsettled everyone even more. "I don't think this bear is just hungry. I think it's expanding its territory, and this village has become its new hunting ground." That was the moment everyone realized the days ahead would not be easy. The bear's next attack would likely be even more dangerous. The village increased its patrols, lit lamps, kept weapons ready, but no one truly knew how close the real danger now was. The tension in the village was already high, but the incident with Gasita introduced a new kind of uncertainty. Everyone kept wondering. The bear had retreated at the sound of the horn, but how long would that fear last? When animals repeatedly encounter humans, they eventually learn human tricks. That fear settled deep into every heart. What if the bear learned that the horn was nothing more than a bluff? Then what? That night, the watch duty fell to Mayor Dean and two young men, Bilal and Saqib. The three sat beside a large bonfire in the central square. Firelight spread in all directions, but more than their eyes, they relied on their ears. From the forest came the sound of crickets, the cool wind brushing past their feet, and the distant murmur of flowing water. But among all those sounds, they were listening for just one thing: the bear's breath, its growl, or the heavy crack of breaking branches. The night grew deeper, slowly and relentlessly. The moon was hidden behind clouds. Darkness spread through the forest like a black ocean, ready to swallow everything in its path. But tonight felt different. There were no sounds coming from the forest, no animals, no birds, no rustling of leaves. It was the kind of silence people recognize as a warning. Mayor Dean rose from beside the fire and stared toward the forest for a long moment. "I've never heard silence like this before," he whispered. Bilal, on night watch for the first time, forced an uneasy laugh. "Maybe the bear went somewhere else tonight?" Mayor Dean shot him a sharp look. "When a man-eater moves elsewhere, you hear life in that place. A forest is never completely silent unless something very large is moving through it. Silence is the bear's first step." The three men exchanged glances. In the firelight, fear was clearly written on their faces. Moments later, a sudden crack came from the left, the sound of a broken branch falling. It was a small noise, but in that moment it felt enormous. All three jolted. Mayor Dean raised his hand, signaling the others to stay quiet. He slowly crouched down, bringing himself closer to the ground so even the faintest sounds could be heard. A few seconds passed in silence. Then another sound, this time something dragging, as if a heavy body was forcing its way through bushes, scraping the earth beneath it. Saqib held his breath. Bilal's hands began to tremble. Mayor Dean remained still, listening, trying to decide whether this was the bear or some other animal. Then, suddenly, a deep, echoing thud of heavy footsteps struck the sandy soil. Bilal blurted out, "It's him!" Mayor Dean ignored the outburst. He reached for the horn lying near the fire, but hesitated. "Not yet," he whispered. "If the bear is really here, I want to know which direction it's coming from." Bilal and Saqib stared into the dark path disappearing into the forest. For a brief moment, it felt as if a black shadow stood there, but the light was too weak to be certain. Suddenly, the bear released its roar, so powerful it sliced through the air and echoed straight into the heart of the village. The sound shook Mayor Dean and the two boys to their core and threw the entire village into chaos. Women and children screamed inside their homes. Men rushed outside. One by one, warning horns began to blare.
But this time, the bear did not run at the sound. Instead, it began moving slowly toward the light. Its eyes gleamed in the firelight. It was a massive bear, broad shoulders,
powerful frame. Its fur glistened as if soaked by rain. Dirt clung to its claws, proof that it had traveled far. The most unsettling thing was this: it was walking straight toward the fire, the very fire that bears usually avoid without hesitation. Without wasting a second, Merdine grabbed Bilal and pulled him back. "It's not afraid of fire tonight," he said urgently. "Understand this clearly. This is no ordinary bear." The bear took a long, deep breath. Its nostrils flared. It was sniffing the air, counting how many humans stood before it, searching for the weakest one. Step by step, it moved closer. Now it was only 10 paces away. In panic, Bilal tried to blow the horn, but it slipped from his hands. The sound that came out was weak, broken. The bear's ears twitched, but it showed no fear. At that moment, Saqib, hiding behind the platform, struck his knee against a piece of wood. The sound was small, but in the forest's silence, it was enough. The bear snapped its head toward him and released a harsh, furious roar. Something shifted in its body. In the next instant, it was about to leap. Merdine shouted, "Run! Everyone, run!" And at that very moment, the bear attacked. The speed at which it moved seemed impossible to the human eye. Despite its massive weight, it looked as if it were floating through the air. It lunged straight towards Saqib, who hadn't even recovered yet. But the bear did not grab him. Instead, it slammed into the ground right in front of him, as if it wanted to display the power of its claws first. It raked the earth so violently that sparks leapt from the fire. This was a new behavior. The bear was not attacking directly. It was using fear, shaking its prey, breaking their balance, enjoying their terror. Saqib collapsed behind the bonfire in panic. Merdine lifted a burning torch and swung it toward the bear. For a brief moment, the bear pulled its head back, but it did not flee. It was now clear. This bear had begun to enjoy human fear, their screams, their panic, their flight. This was not just an attack, it was the beginning of a new phase. The sudden attack by the bear had thrown the entire village into chaos. Merdine, Saqib, and Bilal managed to retreat, barely saving themselves, but the way the bear moved, frantically yet with calculated precision, made it clear that this was no ordinary man-eater. It was extraordinarily intelligent, experienced, and powerful. Panic spread everywhere. Women were scooping up their children and rushing indoors. The men ran outside, some wielding sticks, others banging on drums or shouting warnings to alert the rest of the village. Amid the commotion, the bear suddenly changed direction. Instead of the open field, it headed toward the huts on the edge of the village, mostly belonging to people with livestock. To the bear, these fragile wooden huts were no more than minor obstacles. From a distance, Merdine shouted, "It's heading for the houses. Everyone, lock your children inside and secure your windows." The men ran, but the bear's speed far outmatched theirs. It first stopped in front of an enclosure. 2 goats were inside, but the bear barely glanced at them. Perhaps it wasn't hungry, or maybe its purpose was something else. Entirely. Destroying property, asserting dominance over the area, and instilling fear in the humans. With a heavy swipe of its paw, it smashed the door, the wood splintering inward. It then entered, clawing at the walls and pulling boards outward as if searching for someone. The villagers' hearts raced. Was someone hiding inside? Had a child run there and gotten trapped? Saqib, panicked, asked, "Uncle Merdine, what is it looking for inside?" Merdine replied sternly, "This bear controls the environment before it hunts. It won't stop until it's sure the place is under its control." As soon as the bear came out, its gaze fell on the alley ahead, where 3 young men were trying to escape with a wooden crate. The bear let out a deafening roar and charged. The youth screamed and scattered in different directions, but the bear did not pursue them. Instead, it suddenly turned and attacked the old hand pump standing in the center of the village. First strike, the iron pipe bent. Second strike, the handle snapped and flew off. Third strike, the entire frame collapsed to the ground. The villagers watched in shock. None had ever seen a bear destroy metal objects before. Merdine said, fear evident in his voice, "It's deliberately destroying the water supply, so people are forced to leave their homes. Then it can hunt them." Word of this spread through the village like wildfire. Moments later, the bear made another menacing move. It passed through an open lane and reached the tall wall where the village children often sat. The wall, made of brick, was strong, but when the bear pushed with its paw, the bricks wobbled. A second push, a large section of the wall collapsed.
The villagers watched, stunned. This creature wasn't just after food. It wanted to destroy the villagers' everyday life, leaving them weak, vulnerable, and terrified. Now men, women, and children were all trapped inside their homes. Outside, Merdine and his companions watched the bear's actions from a distance. No one dared approach. Then the bear made a new move, heading toward the fields where crops were growing. Once there, it sniffed the soil as if detecting a new scent. Then it began digging into the ground. The field's owner, old Gulnawaz, could no longer contain himself. "Hey, you'll ruin all my crops!" he shouted and stepped outside. Merdine yelled urgently, "Don't go, come back!" But Gulnawaz didn't listen. With a long stick in hand, he advanced toward the bear. The bear watched him for a moment, then let out a powerful roar. Gulnawaz hesitated, but still moved forward. As he came within 5 paces, Merdine ran with all his strength, grabbed the old man and shoved him back. The bear, refusing to tolerate the audacity, slammed its paw into the ground, sending dirt flying, but it didn't attack. Instead, it returned its attention to the field and began digging furiously. Helping the old man up, Merdine said, "It's not even looking at the crops. It's doing this on purpose. It knows humans will run to protect their land, their livestock, their children. It wants us to come closer to it." The bear suddenly stopped digging. It rose onto its hind legs. Its entire body straightened, towering 6 feet tall, sweat glistening on its forehead, eyes glowing red. And then it slammed its chest with a powerful thud, as if issuing a challenge. "I am the master of this land."
This bear no longer followed the laws of the forest. It had now declared war over this territory. The villagers watched from their homes, frozen. Mothers pressed their hands against their children's mouths, signaling them to stay silent. The men didn't even dare peek outside. The bear, observing all of this, turned toward the bonfire, the same fire that had marked the start of the night's terror. It struck the logs again and again with its massive paws, sending sparks flying in all directions. The sparks mingled with the darkness, creating a surreal, almost magical yet terrifying scene. Merdine whispered, "Tonight, it hasn't just shown its strength. It has made it clear. The village is now its hunting ground." With one last deafening roar, the bear turned and walked back into the forest. But this time, its departure was silent, and everyone knew that this silence wasn't peaceful. It signaled a dangerous, calculated plan in motion. Even after the bear had retreated into the forest, the village didn't return to peace. In fact, for the first time, it was plunged into a deep, suffocating silence. Inside their homes, villagers whispered to one another about what they had seen: the bear's arrival, the way it surrounded the village, smashed iron, wood, and walls. It was not the behavior of an ordinary animal. But even more terrifying than that was this truth. The bear had left without eating anything, which meant it would come back, and next time, perhaps with more strength, more speed, and more preparation. The village elders gathered near the large mill. Merdine, Badr Khan, Babu Kumhar, and the 2 young men, Bilal and Saqib. The fire was burning, but tonight its light offered no comfort. Badr Khan exhaled deeply. "We've seen many bears in our lives, but never anything like this. It destroys on purpose." Babu Kumhar added, "Today it broke the water pump. Tomorrow maybe it will destroy the grain storage. It wants to weaken us by keeping us hungry." Merdine continued, "This bear is intelligent. It doesn't rely only on brute force. It knows where to strike, what to destroy, when to retreat, when to leap." Bilal, trembling, asked, "Uncle, if it's this clever, could it come into our homes?" Merdine paused, then answered, "If it thinks there's easy prey inside, yes, it will come in." Hearing this, the crowd grew even more fearful. At that very moment, a sound came from the direction of the forest, the heavy rustle of bushes. Everyone turned their heads, but it wasn't the bear. 2 livestock owners, Arif and Inam, were running toward the village, gasping for breath. "Everyone, gather quickly," Arif shouted. "We saw something strange in the forest." Merdine stepped forward. "What did you see?" Arif said, "Bears can't climb trees, right? But today, we saw this bear climbing a huge, leaning tree." The villagers were stunned. Badr Khan slapped his forehead. If it can climb trees, it can reach our windows too. The danger just got worse. Inam added an even more alarming detail. And it didn't come down. It stayed up there watching the village, like it was surveying its territory. Hearing this, the villagers' faces drained of color. This animal wasn't just powerful, it was strategic, observing its prey from a distance. At that very moment, a local shepherd, Dilawar, arrived. Sweat streamed down his face, and his voice was shaking.
I just saw the bodies of 2 domestic dogs near the forest path, the same spot where the bear was sitting yesterday. Merdin immediately realized, it's sending us a message, stay away from the forest. The villagers swallowed hard. It's like it's trying to claim the entire area for itself. The night, already tense, was interrupted by a sudden, piercing scream from the village. Everyone jumped. The scream came from the barber's neighborhood. People ran toward the sound. There were 2 or 3 screams, men's, women's, all mingled together. When they arrived, the sight was shocking. A large sack of wheat lay torn in the middle of the street. Half of its contents had spilled onto the ground. But the most terrifying part was that the sack hadn't been torn by a human. Long, deep slashes from a bear's claws were clearly visible. Saqib, trembling, whispered, It was here. Merdin bent down and examined the marks carefully. Yes, and look, these are fresh, no more than 10 minutes old. The villagers were astonished. How could a bear move so silently that no one even noticed its presence? Babu Kumar asked, his voice shaking, but why didn't it attack a person? Merdin explained, the bear didn't hunt, it sent a warning. It's telling us, I'll come back. Right now, I'm just watching who's where. This is how it surveys its territory before hunting. For the first time, the villagers realized that this bear didn't just want to scare them, it wanted to weaken them. At that moment, an elderly woman, Amma Kulsum, stepped forward. Trembling, she picked up pieces of the torn sack. This bear is challenging us. It wants us to run, hide, and be afraid, so that when it returns, no one stands ready to face it. Then another revelation emerged. Bilal pointed to a spot near a post. Look, over there, it left a mark on purpose. Everyone turned and saw a long line carved in the earth, a deep groove made by the bear's claws, like a boundary drawn in a field. Merdin understood immediately. It set its borders. This line marks where humans must not cross, and beyond it, the forest belongs to it. If we step over this line, it will attack directly. Silence fell over the crowd. Everyone now understood that this bear was no longer just an animal. It was a calculated force, expanding its territory and weakening humans in the same way a great predator does to its prey. But the most terrifying truth had yet to come. The bear would return, and next time it wouldn't just be surveying the territory. It wouldn't be silent like tonight. This time it would take something from the village. Night had deepened. The entire remote village was submerged in an eerie silence, the kind that spreads before a great storm. Lanterns and lamps burned dimly in the houses, but behind every window, someone was awake. Everyone knew tonight was not an ordinary night. Tonight could be the night of the black bear's return, the same bear that had for weeks become a symbol of fear and helplessness in the village. Tonight, the most restless was Abdul Rauf, the oldest and most experienced man in the village. He had spent his entire life on the forest's edge. He knew that wild animals followed patterns, that their movements were often predictable, and he understood that, like flowing sand, time forces every animal to cross boundaries eventually. But Abdul Rauf's restlessness tonight wasn't born of fear, it was born of intuition. The predator might strike, perhaps tonight, perhaps even now. Meanwhile, at Shafaq's house, a wave of worry ran through the family. Her younger brother Salal had not returned home since evening. He had gone to fetch firewood, and though he was usually late, tonight's delay didn't feel ordinary. Shafaq sat by the door, rising every few moments to glance outside. Darkness surrounded everything. No sound, no movement, no sign of hope.
Even her father couldn't find words of comfort, because in their hearts everyone was thinking the same thing. Could Salal have gone into the forest? And if he did, is he even safe there? Around 11 that night, a sharp crack came from the back of the village, like a thick branch snapping under a heavy weight. The sound was so clear that every heartbeat in every home seemed to stop for a moment. One thought instantly filled everyone's minds: the black bear. A few seconds of tense silence were followed by a commotion near the goat pens. The animals bleated frantically, objects clattered against wooden fences, and then came a blood-curdling scream, not human, but one that cut through the hearts of every villager. The village erupted in panic. "The bear's here!" People tried to step outside, but fear held them back, their feet retreating almost on their own. The dim lanterns cast trembling shadows across the village. Women grabbed their children and locked them inside rooms. The men, searching for one another, tried to reach the pens, but every step was shackled by terror. When Abdul Rauf arrived, his heart sank. The bear had a large goat clamped in its jaws, shaking it violently. Its body was massive, jet black and glossy. Standing on its hind legs, its sheer size and strength sent shivers down the spine. Its height seemed almost human. Every movement radiated power, confidence, and natural dominance. The bear lifted the goat as a person might lift a doll. It sensed the approaching humans immediately. Turning its head, it fixed them with a gaze full of strange calm. No rage, no panic, just cold, absolute confidence, as if it knew no one there could challenge it. At that moment, someone panicked and threw a stone. It struck the bear's shoulder. The bear dropped the goat, rose fully onto its hind legs, and let out a roar that shook the treetops and froze human hearts. The men fled in terror, but Sarahar, the village's brave youth, stood his ground, locking eyes with the bear. He knew that if they didn't stop the bear tonight, tomorrow it might take a human life. The bear sized him up for a moment, then lunged at full speed. Sarahar leapt to the side just in time, narrowly saving himself, but the bear's power was such that the ground itself seemed to tremble. One swipe of its claws tore the bark off a nearby tree in a single stroke. Witnessing this, Sarahar and the villagers' legs went weak. They had never seen such a strong, massive, and decisive bear. After a few more moments of roaring, the bear clamped the goat in its jaws and walked heavily towards the forest, as if announcing, "This is my territory, and you are merely guests." Panic spread throughout the village. Women shivered, men's hands shook, children hid under blankets. But the one struck with the deepest fear was Shafak, because she suddenly remembered a terrifying truth. If the bear could come this far into the village, then Salal, out there in the forest, what condition could he be in? And so another night fell on the village, but this one wasn't just filled with fear. It was a night of anxious waiting, a mixture of hope and helplessness, because everyone knew that with the next sunrise, one question would rise with the sun. When will the black bear return? And whose turn will it be next? The sun hadn't fully risen when a wave of unease swept through the village. The night's events had left their mark on every household. Women's eyes showed the exhaustion of a sleepless night, children's faces bore the imprint of fear, and the men walked with the urgency that only helplessness and responsibility can create. Everyone asked the same question: when will the bear come again? And most importantly, where is Salal? After dawn, a group of men gathered: Sarahar, Abdul Rauf, Kalu, and 2 other youths. Determination was written on every face. They would find Salal, even if it meant confronting the bear. Sarahar took the lead. He had stayed awake all night, knowing that if they had acted even few moments earlier, the bear might not have taken the goat. But now a new worry gripped him. If the bear had taken the goat, could Salal have also fallen into its grasp? The thought struck the group like lightning. They decided unanimously, search must begin immediately. The path from the back of the village leading into the forest was damp with night dew, littered with broken leaves, and marked by deep footprints. The footprints of a massive black bear. Abdul Rauf knelt and examined the tracks. This is the same bear, and very heavy. Its steps wouldn't be this deep with the goat's weight unless it was moving quickly. Looks like it was agitated, probably because of the villagers' presence. Saraha asked anxiously, "Does this mean it could be nearby?" Abdul Rauf nodded slightly. "The forest has many paths, but right now we're looking for one thing only, Salal's trail." They pressed on. The footprints grew deeper, the soil more churned. After a while, Shafak's father joined them, eyes full of both fear and hope. He hadn't come empty-handed. He carried an old piece of Salal's shirt, so that if they found any torn threads along the way, identification would be easier. 2 hours into the search, the first sign appeared. Kalu pointed near a bush. "Look, a piece of cloth, exactly the color Salal wears." Saraha held the piece of cloth in his hand. It was torn, yes, but there were no bloodstains. That small detail filled the team with hope. Abdul Rauf assessed the situation. Someone passed through here, either running or in a hurry, but the good news is there's no blood. That means he isn't injured. Shafak's father pressed the cloth to his chest and stood in silence for a long moment. That pause seemed to hold everyone's spirit. The mere possibility that someone was still alive can infuse new strength even in the middle of the most exhausting struggle. As they moved deeper into the forest, the trees thickened. Sunlight was trapped in the upper canopy, casting only faint, fragmented rays to the forest floor. The humid air carried a stale, earthy smell, and beneath it, a faint, heavy scent that could only mean the presence of a large animal. Kalu suddenly stopped. "Look, fresh soil. Someone's been here very recently, just moments ago." Seriousness crossed Abdul Rauf's face. "These are the bear's marks. Its claws dug into the earth. It may have paused here." The team exchanged glances. One thought dominated their minds. If the bear was here moments ago, Salal might be here too. A short distance ahead, a thick tree stood, its bark ripped and shredded, fresh claw marks, as if the bear had torn it in a single swipe. The scratches were so high that they were at least 2 feet above a human's height. Saraha whispered, "This kind of power, these marks, this isn't an ordinary bear. This is a rare, massive black bear." Abdul Rauf inhaled deeply. And bears of this kind are extremely sensitive about their territory, their prey, and their path. We must be extremely careful. The forest grew denser. A few steps ahead, a patch of soft, muddy ground caught their attention. Kalu called out, "Look, footprints, child-sized, exactly like Salal's shoes." Near the prints, the grass was pressed down as if someone had sat down, catching their breath. Abdul Rauf speculated. He must have rested here, maybe running to escape the bear, but he was alive when he reached this point. Hearing this, Shafak's father's eyes welled up with tears. "My child, he's alive. He's still out there somewhere." He raised his hands to the sky and whispered a quiet prayer. Suddenly the wind shifted. A cold gust rustled the leaves. Abdul Rauf immediately stopped. "Everyone, stay silent. The wind carries our scent. If the bear is nearby, it will smell us first. We must move carefully." For several tense seconds, the group stood still. The forest's usual sounds had changed. Birdsong had dwindled, and where birds fall silent, a predator is usually near. Kalu pointed to a shallow pit a few feet ahead. On its edge lay the third piece of cloth. "Look, maybe Salal slipped here." Looking inside, the soil was soft, as if someone had crawled out only a few hours ago.
Abdul Rauf said, "He fell, but he got out on his own. Luckily, the pit isn't deep." The forest's light was fading, and the humidity increasing. Abdul Rauf addressed the group. "We must hurry. Bears rest during the day in their dens. If Salal is anywhere along its path, we can't waste time." Saraha gripped his weapon tightly. "No matter what, we have to find him and bring him back today." And so the team pressed on, each step heavy with fear, each breath taut with tension, yet hearts clinging to one hope. Salal is alive, and he's waiting for us to find him. The path into the forest grew quieter and more oppressive with every step. The sun beat down overhead, but the thick canopy brought a chilling shade, sometimes comforting, sometimes terrifying. The team, Saraha, Abdul Rauf, Kalu, Shafak's father, and the 2 other youths moved forward as if every moment could bring a decisive turn. The hope of finding Salal had become tangible, making every step quicken the pulse. 3 torn pieces of cloth, small footprints, impressions in the soft mud, all screamed the same truth. The child was alive.
As they reached a large boulder, the forest's atmosphere shifted. Birds fell silent, the rustling of leaves slowed. Such signs often indicated a large predator nearby. Abdul Rauf raised his hand, signaling everyone to stop. There's a heavy scent in the air. It's the bears. It isn't far from here. Saraha's steps slowed automatically. So Salal could be in the same direction. Abdul Rauf didn't answer, but the silence in his eyes said it all. As they passed behind a large boulder, Kalu suddenly spotted something on the ground. Look, these look like a child's handprints. 2 small handprints were pressed into the soil, as if someone had fallen and tried to steady themselves. The prints were fresh, made last night or early this morning. Shafaq's father stepped forward, placing his hands over the prints, as if trying to feel the child's breath. "My boy, he was here, right here." His voice carried both hope and a fracture of despair. From somewhere deeper in the forest came a faint sound, neither a scream nor a roar, just a weak, drawn-out ha, as if someone, exhausted to their limits, was quietly calling for help. The group exchanged glances. Abdul Rauf immediately identified the direction. That sound, it came from the eastern slope. Let's go. They hurried toward the slope, but as they got closer, the sound faded. It was as if the voice itself was losing strength, whispering for help with its last energy. At the edge of the slope stood a large tree. Around its roots, the soil was overturned, as if someone had dug or dragged themselves through it. Large paw prints were clearly visible. Saraha said firmly, "The bear definitely passed here, but the sound was human. This could be Salal." Abdul Rauf knelt down, examining the soil carefully. "These are very fresh, maybe 1 or 2 hours old. If the bear was here, Salal could be nearby, or he may have fled in some direction to escape." A few steps ahead, Kalu suddenly raised his hand. "Stop, look at this." Between the trees, they noticed an old hollow trunk. The interior was dark, the decayed wood hiding the faint sound of breathing. Hearts skipped a beat. Shafaq's father stepped forward. "Salal, Salal, son." A weak voice came from inside. "Abu." That single word sent shivers through the entire team. Shafaq's father dropped to his knees. "Son, come out, it's me, Abu." Slowly, a small hand emerged, then the other, and finally Salal's face appeared, weak, covered in dirt, but very much alive. His clothes were torn, and he was exhausted, but his eyes were full of life. Saraha breathed out involuntarily. "Thank God, he's alive."
Salal was pulled out, and Shafaq's father held him to his chest as if he were breathing life into him anew. But Abdul Rauf's voice cut through sharply. "We have to move quickly. The bear cannot be far. If this is its territory, it will return." Salal spoke in a weak voice. "Abu, it was chasing me. I ran. Then I saw this tree. I hid inside." Hearing this, everyone realized that the bear could return at any moment. The team immediately decided to take Salal along the right-hand path, which was narrower and relatively safer. But as they began moving, a rustling sound came from the bushes, a heavy body shifting through the undergrowth. Everyone froze. Saraha whispered, "It's coming." Abdul Rauf quickly formed a protective circle around Salal. "Don't make a sound. Move back slowly." Movement stirred in the bushes again. Leaves shook violently. Then silence. It seemed the bear was watching them, but it wasn't attacking. Perhaps it was tired, or maybe the group's size made it cautious. Abdul Rauf seized the moment. "It won't follow us now. We need to get out, fast." The team moved, keeping Salal in the center, first slowly, then quicker, and finally almost running. Every turn in the forest felt alive. Every rustle of the leaves made hearts pound. But the bear did not pursue them. When they finally neared the village and saw the path leading to the fields, they collectively let out their first deep, relieved breath. The villagers saw them from afar. Women ran forward, children shouted with joy, and the elders bowed their heads in gratitude. Seeing Salal safely return to the village, everyone wept. This wasn't just the return of a child, it was a victory for the entire community, a victory over a fear that had loomed over them for days. Abdul Rauf spoke softly.
The bear is still out there in the forest, but today we saved a life. Today humanity has won. And so, that day was etched forever in the village's history. The day when a child, fear, and hope all faced the forest together. If you enjoyed this story, my brothers and friends, take a moment to hit the like button. Your like doesn't just show appreciation for this effort, it gives us the courage to bring more stories like this. If you are here for the first time, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you are the first to get every new tale from Shikarnama. And yes, you can also send me your own written or heard true stories. Maybe the next story I share will be yours, told in my voice to reach the whole world. Friends, that was today's chilling tale. The darkness of the forest, the whispers of fear, and the fight for human survival that time will never forget. I am Sharik, and you are watching Shikarnama. Every Wednesday and Saturday at 9 p.m., we bring you a new thrilling story. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay aware of your surroundings, and remember, the forest isn't just home to animals. Sometimes there's something out there so extraordinary that even a story can't fully capture it. Allah Hafiz, see you next night with the next story.